tilt pro bass action. Big fish, hot sticks, and serious money on the line. There's inside info, tournament tactics, winning tips and techniques. And it's all designed to help you become a better bass angler. This is the Gander Mountain Invitational Pro-Am Bass Tour. Brought to you by Dodge Trucks, Mercury Marine, Triton Boats, and Rapala Lures.
Nice chain of legs bass.
Winding like a shimmering string of pearls through the gently rolling hills of northeastern Illinois, the Fox Chain of Lakes beckons thousands of visitors annually. Just 40 miles from the teeming metropolis of Chicago, the chain offers welcome respite from the bustling city, its calm waters and serpentine channels soothing the souls of workaday weary suburbanites. Sailing, boating, skiing, camping, all sorts of outdoor recreation are popular on the chain, and among the foremost is the bass fishing. Consisting of 9 individual lakes, all connected by the Fox River, the system presents a myriad of challenges and opportunities for bass anglers. It's April, early spring. The bass are pre-spawn, staging in quickly warming backwaters and channels. The males are most active this time of year, scouring the shallows for spawning locations and bait fish. The larger females remain deep, under tight cover of weeds and wood. Savvy anglers will concentrate on the more active males, hoping to limit early. They'll be skipping docks with light jigs and plastics, working shallow backwaters with spinner baits, flying emerging vegetation with Texas rigs in the channels. Once they have a limit in the box, it's time to go deep for a lunker female or two. 12 to 15-foot weed lines are prime targets for Texas rigs and cranks. And flooded timber with a well-placed flippin' jig could very well produce the biggest fish of the tournament.
Fish.
It's a finesse bite, to be sure. Cool temperatures, muddy bottom, dark, cloudy water. That calls for small profile baits worked slowly and methodically. But you still need some flash, some color, and a little rattle wouldn't hurt either. It's just a matter of getting their attention and then giving them plenty of time to bite. As the old saying goes, it's all in the wrist. The Fox Chain literally has miles of no-wake zones, presenting yet another challenge to anglers. Moving from one spot to another will take precious time, and with just one day to fish, you'd best have your spots planned carefully. Stay tuned. We'll be back to get some insight from the anglers themselves on how to tackle the Fox Chain of Lakes on the Gander Mountain Pro-Am Bass Tour.
Nice pre-spawn female.
9 distinct bodies of water, more than 6,000 acres, miles and miles of channels and backwaters, and just one day to fish it all. So how do you approach the Fox Chain of Lakes?
From what I understand, I believe the Fox Chain is the second busiest inland waterway in the country. That ought to answer all your questions.
It's pre-spawn. The active bass should be shallow, attracted to the warming water. But where? There are hundreds of potential hotspots. Do you concentrate on backwater brush, docks in the channels, maybe the river? These anglers have a couple of days to pre-fish the chain in preparation for the tournament. Let's hook up with a few of the guys and get their thoughts on sizing up this complex body of water.
I've been fishing the chain for about 20 years now, tournament fishing about 19. Chain is pretty simple early in the year. It gets a little difficult later in the year because the fish's patterns change so much. When it's cold out in the spring, early spring, the first couple of warm days you get, the fish start moving up and they stay there. I prefer to take them on top water. I always believe it. When a fish is shallow, you can catch them on top water baits almost as easy as you can on anything else, and there's no more exciting way to catch a fish than to catch one on top. And I think that what you're going to have to do to catch the fish is to fish slow, fish consistent, and search for them until you find them. There's not going to be a lot of fish up in here in shallow water, but they're going to be starting to move in, and I suspect that in another couple of days there'll be more fish in here than there is right now. That's the kind we're looking for. Nice chain of lakes bass. Fat south, see the female, how swollen her belly is? That's what she's doing. I caught her right off the edge of the reef, just where I figured she'd be.
Been fishing 14 years as a pro now. Full-time guide service on Lake Geneva.
Sure, the calendar says the fish should be shallow, but in recent days, Mother Nature delivered a knockout cold front punch that has pros like Doug Becker working in slow motion.
The change in the weather this week is really gonna slow things down a little bit. Fish were starting to move in with the warm temperatures last week. A lot of fish were being caught, a lot of small males, but they were moving. The last couple days have been okay. This morning we were down to 37. We've lost about 3-4 degrees, and the fish are a little slow right now. With the water being cold, no matter what you're throwing, work it slow. Just when you think you're going slow enough, go a little slower. Give the fish time. They're not gonna jump at the bait.
You can cast up to or pitch it up to a stump and work it nice and slow, just shaking it. I got a 3/8 ounce jig. There's a fish right there.
So, shallow stealth will be key, but what presentation? Jason Sweatman likes an old standard, the jig and pig.
As you saw, I was doing a nice little shake on that fish. Nice little bass, nice little 12-incher. Ain't quite gonna do it, still a lot of fun. That fish actually took it when I was shaking the jig, got it down off the face of the rock where it made a transition from rock to mud. Another really good tip for fishing wood with a jig. Take your weed guards just like that, fan them out like that. It'll keep it so it comes nice and easy right through the wood. You seem to like that craw-colored jig though. There's a good one. That's a good fish. Come here, fish. There we go. There's a nice chain fish. Get on that jig. I really like that jig. It's a nice 4-pounder. So it's going to take the win the tournament on Saturday. Fish just like this. Definitely.
I've been tournament bass fishing for probably about 15, 16 years now, and I really love doing it. I love the competition, the camaraderie, and I love catching fish, and then all that goes together. It makes for a great day in the water.
For Rob Fleming, this brutal cold front means the fish have moved out of the shallows to main lake flats, where a slow search is the tactic.
We're probably going to be concentrating today on the mouths of the channels where the fish do spawn, or the bays where they typically spawn in. We're going to be throwing some jerk baits, some suspending jerk baits, some rattle baits, lipless crankbaits, covering a lot of water, just to see if we can find some of these fish that are coming up here staging and getting ready to spawn. First bait I'm going to be using is little number 7 husky jerk. It's a little smaller bait. I think with this colder weather, this might not be a bad choice. A good way to fish this bait is just to make a long cast, pop it a few times, let the bait actually just sit for sometimes a few seconds. These fish are definitely not real aggressive, and having that bait just kind of sitting there in front of them makes them want to come up and smack it.
I fish about 35, 40 tournaments a year.
Others, like Dave Linton, are on main lake flats as well, but Dave takes a more aggressive approach.
Right now I'm rattle trapping the flats on Channel Lake, looking for pre-spawn fish. The water temperature is 54.6. I keep an eye on the water temperature all day long. About 80% of your tournaments, if you look in your tournament files and stuff like that, where you can see where people won, it'll be on Channel Lake or Catherine. So I'm going to concentrate 2 days of pre-fishing on these 2 lakes, and we'll go from there.
It's just something I enjoy doing, competition a little bit, and going to the scale with some nice fish.
And there are hundreds of man-made structures that pros like Rob Kowalski believe always hold fish.
On this lake here, fishing these bridges is usually fairly pretty good. For one, you can see there's a current rippling through here, and bass like to migrate in the spring through the current. There's always activity coming through here, and they always use these to migrate, and sometimes they'll use this to stop and rest behind these pillars. I just got a little split shot, and when I throw it down there, I'm just kind of letting the current drag it and bounce it along, simulate more natural.
What's supposed to be a predictable and really quite simple shallow pre-spawn bite has turned into a finesse struggle against moody, finicky fish. Who'll solve the fox chain puzzle and take home the $10,000 top prize? We'll find out when the Gander Mountain Pro-Am Bass Tour returns. In the annals of tournament bass fishing, the Fox Chain is hallowed water, for it was here that the sport was born. Long before the days of the big-time southern circuits, old-timers like Buck Perry were writing the book on modern bass tactics and tackle. Fox was their proving ground.
While not common knowledge, the chain of lakes north of Chicago was one of the incubators of today's bass fishing tournament phenomenon. In the period of the late 1950s and 60s, a promoter named Hy Peskin began an angling spectacular called the World Series of Fishing. This was the forerunner of Bassmaster and all the angling competitions which were to follow. Many an early pro cut his teeth on this circuit. Ricky Green, Jimmy Houston, Al Lindner, and Virgil Ward. The chain, as it's locally referred to, along with sites in Oklahoma and Missouri, was the hub of intense early interest in competitive angling. Also, something that's little known is the fact that plastic worm fishing, as a method, made its debut right here on the Fox Chain. Plus, some of the earliest use of the safety pin spinnerbait occurred right here as well. Indeed, today's tournament bass fishing world owes a whole note of thanks to these waters and the anglers that pioneered it.
Tourney day, and anglers are faced with a rude awakening. 35 degrees, 25-mile-an-hour winds, the kind of weather that keeps bass hunkered down and tight-lipped, as if the bite hasn't been tough enough. But there's 10,000 bucks on the line, and the Gander Mountain boys are chomping at the bit. The local pros are confident with their knowledge of the water, but they know the big guns from out of town have their eyes on the very same prize. So who's it gonna be? What's it gonna take? We'll find out soon enough as we blast off into the fickle and feisty Fox Lake Chain on the Gander Mountain Pro-Am Bass Tour.
With this cold front moving in as cold as it was last night, I think the fishing's probably going to pick up somewhere around 9 or 10 o'clock if the sun stays out and warms things up a little bit. I think it's going to be a tough bite for everybody this morning early.
It's been one cold front too many for Dick Bukotic's shallow topwater bite. A quick switch to docks produces a small male, but it's slow going. It's a traffic jam in the channels, but there are fish to be had.
There's one for the box.
Jason Sweatman isn't catching monsters, but he's boxing fish consistently.
On the trailer, though, guys. Oh, I got the one I missed earlier. Boy, that trailer got him, that's all. I missed that fish. Thursday night right there.
On the southern end of the chain, we find Dave Linton with smaller crowds, but also small fish. With half a limit in the box, Linton decides to move north. And it pays off quickly with another keeper. Elsewhere, Carl Radel is on his way to a solid limit, but it's been anything but consistent.
Well, we've caught them all through here. So one here, one there, one here, one there.
And there is no one right way to handle these moody post-front fish. While most will slow things down, pro Dave Brown decides to pick up the pace.
Earlier this morning, we found a crankbait bite in the pads. We got 2 fish right away, but they seem to be slapping the backside of the crankbait, so I'm not getting very good hooks. They won't take a real slow-moving bait. I got to move this crankbait through the water and glance it off of obstacles.
So, some are looking for a fast reaction, while others are working small baits super slow. And, all alone in another back channel, defending tour champ Grant Miller thinks he may have the best combination.
It's early spring and the water's still pretty cold. And the fish are shallow, but they're extremely spooky. What works for me is fishing a sinking worm, rigged wacky style, which means basically just hook it right through the middle of the worm, all the way through, and leave the hook exposed. With the fish that's spooky, I need to make long casts up the bank, and I'm not seeing the fish, but I know the fish are there, so I try to put the lure by them and just fish it extremely slow. You need to keep the boat away from the fish, otherwise they'll spook for sure. I like to keep the trolling motor on a low power setting so I don't stir up all the mud and the weeds. Even though the water isn't overly clear, I still am going with a Berkeley Vanish line 8-pound test, which is a pretty finesse line, but I don't want to do anything to spook these fish. You should just inch along the bank, make long casts, let it set a long time, and the fish will come up and grab it.
Fish.
That's a good one, too. There he is. Nice little guy. He liked that Berkeley gulp.
Miller has 6 good fish in the live well, but with time running out, can he contact the final 2 fish he needs to fill out his limit? When we come back, it's all up to the scales. Weigh-in time on the Fox Chain and the Gander Mountain Pro-Am Bass Tour. The field limps into the Gander Mountain stage like a prize fighter that just lost a 15-round decision. With small fish and few limits, the $10,000 top prize will come down to a matter of ounces.
14 inches in length, it's an 8-fish limit. We're playing for $10,000.
Jason Sweatman's day started fast, but ended slow. 3 fish for just over 6 pounds in 13th place. Rob Fleming steps to the tank with a solid bag of fish.
What do you got? 8/78's the lock.
Fleming will finish in 8th. Dave Linton is in with just half a limit.
Not a bad bag. 742. Good job, guys.
Linton slides into 11th. The tough conditions have the big fish at a premium, but Joe Marchese managed a couple of beauties, including the big fish of the tournament at 3.39 pounds. Unable to fill out his limit, Grant Miller unloads just 6 fish, but they're all good ones.
I spent 2 days basically throwing everything I could buy at Gander Mountain at these fish, and I didn't get anything hardly in 2 days of practice, but I did see some. I think I got 1 bite in practice, and I just went out there and I threw that lure that I got that bite on and threw it all day long, and that kind of probably helped me out just to throw one thing all day long. Have some confidence even though it was 1 bite.
That helped, though. I bet he's in the lead, though, 80. 1460. There's your leader right now. 14 what, Steven? 1460. 1460 for Grant Miller. Good job.
Miller takes the lead. Now it's up to the rest of the field to knock him off. Carl Radel, with 6 fish, takes the first swing.
1066 is the lock. You're 4 pounds short.
Next, it's Bill Baker, who's got at least 1 real nice fish.
What do you got, Steven?
1373.
That's good for second place, right? 1373. He's got a big fish. Grab your big fish.
Finally, it comes down to Keith McNaught to take the last shot at overtaking Grant Miller. And McNaught, with partner Stu Arthur, has the only 8-fish limit in the field. But are they big enough?
Ooh, look at this. Look how close. 1417. And you're at what with Grant Miller? 1450, so he's 30 hundredths, about 4 ounces.
McNaught comes up just short, giving defending tour champ Grant Miller another Gander Mountain title on his first trip to Illinois' Fox Chain of Lakes.
First tournament of the year for me. I came down and I only had 2 days of practice, and I really didn't do very well in practice. I was sight fishing, and I found fish that I figured would make a limit in the shallows, but I really couldn't get them to bite. So for the tournament, I basically went with what I thought was the most finesse style presentation for sight fishing, which was a 4.5-inch stick bait, and I rigged it wacky style. We caught fish all day long. Most of them were short, obviously. We only weighed 6 fish. But this apparently was the right 6 fish.
What a start to the season for the defending Tour champ. Miller takes home the $10,000 top prize and his second Gander Mountain Pro-Am Bass Tour title. This was the second event on the Gander Mountain Pro-Am Bass Tour's Illinois division. In the first event on Lake Shelbyville, Rob Kowalski Jr. outlasted the field in a very tough bite to win the $10,000 top prize. Next week, the Tour heads for Lake Wisconsin for the first event of the season in the Wisconsin division of the Gander Mountain Pro-Am Bass Tour. Big fish, fast action, and valuable lessons from some of the best bass anglers in the country. It's all right here next week on the Gander Mountain Pro-Am Bass Tour. Before we go, we'd like to take one more opportunity to thank our fine sponsors, including Dodge Trucks, Mercury Marine, Triton Boats, Rapala, and all of our other partners who make the Gander Mountain Pro-Am Bass Tour possible.